Welcome, everybody. Today we are here. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. And my co-host, Cindy Vickers, is out and about today. She's going to try and call in. But in the meanwhile, we have a very special guest, Brandi. I don't even know your last name, Brandi.
It's Brandi Sidebottom.
Brandi Sidebottom, and she's a trainer at Kennelwood. And we thought we would talk. We've talked a little bit about training in the past, and thought it'd be fun to kind of reconnect and talk a little bit more about a different perspective from a different person. So, Brandi, if people want to get a hold of you or any of the training programs at Kennelwood, what do they do? Is there a website or something?
Yeah, you can go to Kennelwood.com, and it gives you the option to contact a trainer and ask questions.
Oh, that's good. So now I know there are how many locations right now in Kennelwood?
I believe there's 7.
7 around the St. Louis, and you said there's one in O'Fallon, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's one in St. Charles area, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's very cool. And each one of them offers a basic complement of services that Kennelwood offers. And you said all of them, not all of them do training. One does not do training.
I believe just one does just grooming and some boarding maybe.
Cool. So, okay, so you're a trainer. How long have you been there?
I've been at Kennelwood 1 year.
Oh, and before that?
I was at the Tom Rose School for a couple years. I went through the class, and then I stayed and helped a student and did some tutoring with them.
Oh, wow. So when you become a trainer, you have to go through a certain rigors or a program, and then you get, a basic certification?
Yes, there's a professional certification, and then you can continue on and do your master's and an advanced master's if you wanted. It's like a trade school certificate.
And then you can just pick whatever area expertise you want?
Yes, they train you at the Tom Rose School in all of them, and then you can go from there.
Can you give us kind of a summary of what those training options are and that people can look at to do?
There's so much. There's, the basic
generally.
obedience and agility, scent work, search and rescue, bite work, or personal protection. Fun classes like rally classes and fly ball and disc and dock diving. There's just so much you can do.
Is there let's see, there's, what's the 10 points of a good citizen puppy or something like that?
Oh.
There's 10 training points that they have to do and accomplish to
become a canine good citizen.
Yes.
It's it's just to make it so that your puppy can prove itself to be well-behaved citizen, so part of the community. So a stranger has to come up and pet the dog, and then there has to be someone to groom the dog or use a brush. Mm-hmm. A strange dog has to walk by and your dog can't react. Mm-hmm. Being able to sit and stay for just a little bit and down and stay and things like that, just to be behaved around different scenarios.
Oh, that's very cool. I don't think I could be behaved, if something walked by and I thought it was interesting. I couldn't close my eyes to it. So, but that's been my problem my whole life. And then some of especially the masters and stuff, what are those opportunities? So if you picked one of those areas, one of those core areas, and you wanted to pursue that, do you go back to a special school, or does Kennelwood provide you advanced training, or the student?
Well, it depends what school and what road you take. There's a lot of different ways to become a trainer, and there's different certifications. So,
what's your particular drive?
Going through the Tom Rose School was, through my certification. But I like the obedience and the nose work and the search and rescue and the fun classes, the agility and the fly ball, things like that. And to advance yourself in that, you need to find someone, like a mentor. Or there's a lot of...
like a search and rescue program.
There's clubs you can join.
Right,
There's clubs you can join. And there's always people to help. And then you can also attend I want to say conventions, but that's not what I mean, like clinics and hired trainers, more experienced trainers will give the clinics, and then they give you an opportunity to learn from them. That's probably the best way to go about it.
Do you collect points or some kind of credits if you do that? Or you just do it and but you can add it to your resume,
correct.
Right? Oh,
yes.
That's very cool.
Yep.
And then in Kennelwood, what do they offer? Let's say I'm going to start at the puppy level with a new pup.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So what are the options going up and forward through the Kennelwood system as a pet owner?
Well, All of the trainers there, they are certified or able to teach your puppy the basic puppy obedience, and then they all kind of have their own passions. So each individual trainer is going to have their own focus. So say one trainer is going to be more educated on the agility part. So if that's what you want, you might have to ask what kind of experience they have in the agility or what clinics they've attended. And then there's some trainers that do the personal protection. So if you're interested in a lot of really strict obedience and that sort of thing, so you could start into the personal protection, then there's certain trainers that have that passion that you're going to need to talk to.
So Kennelwood has that kind of flexibility.
Yes.
I didn't realize it. I thought it was kind of like you have to take the standard series of courses and nothing deviates from that. But that's not the case.
We're here to help you and your dog.
So you basically customize it to both your interest as a trainer, but also you can drive different interests in the pet owner.
Yes, if you're more interested and you want a therapy dog or you want a service dog, you just have to mention that from the beginning and, see if that trainer has that passion or that certification to help you with that. If not, you can just ask. There's another trainer in Kennelwood that does, and there will be.
And that's, I was just thinking, that's personal or class kind of instruction. You have
It's personal.
Personal, but you can't have, are there classes like puppy classes where you have socialization included? And
Well,
all
the
that?
socialization is included in the day training program. So that's where you drop your puppy off, like a kid going to school, and pick them up in the evening. And that includes your puppy play day or your day camp, your socialization, and your training and personal training.
So that's why my parents would drop me off. So get rid. I thought they wanted to get rid of me, but I wasn't sure of it. But I guess it was to get someone else taking care of me, like the teacher, which was always a challenge, obviously. But that's really neat. So where do you go from here? I mean, what's the intent? You're going to work so many years at a Kennelwood setting, or do you hope to stay within the system, or do you want to take yourself to a master's level or a teaching level?
Well, for right now, I want to stay with Kennelwood for a little bit. I'd like to title my dogs a little more, get more out there and show. I really haven't done that yet.
So they become
Yes.
known as a certification in something. And I know you mentioned to me coming over here that you really like the search and the nose stuff. So tell us an example of that. How is that applied? Is that working with the police? Or other rescue?
Can be. I think the police and emergency crews like that, they already have clubs that they are associated with. Those are the clubs that you probably, I'm sure you have to prove yourself to join. They don't just take anyone. So you would hope to hook up with one of them, and then police would call you if they needed you and things like that. But there's also clubs you can join that are more for fun, or because there's dog search rescue groups too for missing dogs or other things like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be missing or injured people.
I think a couple of years ago I saw at the Six Flags grounds, they had a big national convention, and I think it was also not only training, but I think it was competition. And it was they had, I know it sounds gross, body part searches and stuff like that.
Cadaver,
cadaver searches, and they had all kinds of different agility stations, and you could compete or practice for any of those. That was really neat. That
sounds fun.
Quite interesting, and I think it just happened to be at that site that particular year, like a national event.
Wow.
So, that's very good. So what's your favorite breed?
I'm partial to labs, but I just have a brand new Basset Hound puppy, and I really like her.
Oh, that puppy was darling. So is that because that particular breed fits the kind of interest you have in terms of search and rescue and all that?
The lab, yeah. I really like, they're just easy to work with, and they have a lot of drive, a lot of food drive. They're fun to train. They're people friendly, usually dog friendly. They're just really fun to work with.
Have you found one breed to be specifically or uniquely hard to train?
In the beginning, I really thought that, I had an idea in my head that there were some breeds that I was just, I'm not going to want one of those, or I'm not going to want to work with one of those. And then one will come along through Kennelwood, and I'll change my mind completely. I'll be like, well, maybe they're not all bad.
I had dachshunds for a long time, and they were stubborn. I felt they were really bright. But gosh, they were just a pain in the tush.
They are a little more stubborn, yeah.
And they're so you do see that.
Yeah.
And of course, I have Frenchies now, and I think the Frenchies are pretty smart in most cases. Although some of them I'm wondering about. Some of my dogs, I don't know where they come from, but they're really cool. So this is really great. I just love. some of the tools, or let's talk first, maybe even before the tools, let's talk a little bit about the jargon of training. So what are some key words that are associated with your training skills that you have to use and pet owners need to know? What are some of the key?
Well, when you talk about a dog's personality, you talk about their temperament. When you say you want a dog to have a nice temperament, you know, it's not necessarily. A lot of people will go for the dog that seems gentle or shy when they go to pick it out. Confidence is key here. You want a dog's personality and temperament to be confident. The more confident they are, the less nervous they are, the less likely they are to be aggressive or react.
Really? So someone, I mean, as a naive, I'm not a trainer, so I would think, well, if he's too aggressive in the puppy group, is that going to make him more likely an aggressive dog? Or
Yeah, not aggressive, confident.
Oh, confidence.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I want them to be assertive. I don't want them to be necessarily aggressive. But I want, you know, when you drop the bowl of food on the ground, I want the puppy that runs towards the food, not the puppy that runs to the corners to get away from it. You know, I want that drive for the food to be there, stronger than the fear.
Because that's going to help you in your training process?
It'll help you in your training process. It'll just help you with having a more, I don't want to say calm dog,
Well, kind of
put together.
Right, kind of stable.
Stable, that's the word. Thank you.
Right. And what other terms do we use in training? Actually, are there certain things you use or tell people? I know there's clicker training, but do you have to use certain words to heal, or does it really matter as long as you're consistent?
Long as you're consistent. Everyone does something different. We use the climb command at Kennelwood. I've heard people use the place command. It's all the same thing.
What's a place command?
It's a place where your dog, when you ask it to stay up, say on a bed or an area, they're allowed to do anything they want up there except bark and go to the bathroom. They just cannot get off until you release them. It's a really good command. We use it in all of the puppies and dogs that come for their basic obedience. It's great for like when the UPS man comes at the front door. That way you put your dog on the climb, you go into the door, don't have to worry about your dog bolting out the door.
I've been trying to train my wife that way for many years. It has never worked, though. So
that's the climb command.
Climb command. Now, how about some of the tools of the trade? What? Let's say I'm a pet owner and I'm going to take a class. Am I going to be told that, hey, you need to get this kind of lead or this kind of that? What are some of the instruments that we should always be playing for?
Okay, well, first of all, the tools and instruments, it really depends. All dogs are different, just like people. So don't come in, you know, saying I'm never going to use a pinch collar, or I'm never going to do that, or I want an electric collar right away. You have to really work with your trainer and with your dog and, you know, decide what's best for you and your dog, because they're all different. But one of the things I see a lot is people don't understand the difference between a pinch collar and a choke chain. A choke chain just looks like a chain, and it's basically what it does. It just tightens around the neck.
Yeah.
It can be used effectively if correctly done. A pinch collar it doesn't squeeze the neck. It's the one with the prongs. So
right.
that's the
kind of
pinch collar.
intertwining prongs.
Yeah.
So that looks more barbaric.
But
And
it's
I
not.
know as a veterinarian that the choke collar I always think is a bad thing, because that can really hurt and crush the trachea and stuff. I'd rather they use something in nylon, or I like something, the gentle leader or the pinch collar I like a lot, actually.
Yeah, I like pinch collar as a training tool. It might not be something you need forever. That's why I like it. It's used as a training tool. And once your dog walks calmly on a leash, you know, you can gradually take that away.
Right.
It's just a training tool, and when used correctly, it's a lot more gentle because it doesn't put pressure, like you said, on the trachea.
Right.
It's just a quick, like the mother correcting the baby, and then release.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. That's a good to know. So on the pinch collar, then, some people still use it, though, only when they go out. So around the house and stuff, they're not going to use it, but they'll always continue to use it. Now, the gentle leader I mentioned just a moment ago is a combination of nylon that goes around the neck and around the muzzle. And what I found was always interesting. I've seen animals that were just full of themselves, crazy, wild, more energy than you can imagine, and you put that gentle leader on, and if you use it correctly, those animals just like almost turn off from energy to, you know, compliant. They're listening to you. They're sitting. So what's the principle there? Is it just
you're taking away the control of their head.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So that's very neat. So we got the tools down. We got the temperament is going to be something that's going to drive the training methodology that you use, and it's going to be fairly customized at Kennelwood.
Yes.
I think that's really neat because I never understood that. I kind of figured it was you go through our very structured programs, and you go from this level to this level to this level, but you're saying they basically are customizing it for the need of the dog and the pet owner.
Yes.
And how much time, real quickly, does the pet owner need to put into the reinforcement of your training every day?
Well, it really depends on which part of the training. If you do the day training and the trainer's training that dog all day long, then you can probably only do your 15, 20 minutes a day. If you're doing private lessons, maybe once a week, something like that, you really need to do your homework and try to do at least 2 or 3 sessions of 15 to 20 minutes each day.
And for a while, and then all of a sudden,
For a while,
so they
yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, we've had some really good discussion. We're going to stop for just a moment, take a break. And again, this is our wonderful guest, Brandi. I'm not going to sidestep.
Sidebottom.
Sidebottom, say my dear, whatever.
Yeah.
From Kennelwood. We'll be back in just a moment. We'll continue our discussion on training. Thank you very much.
He's a tramp, but they love him. Breaks a new heart.
Welcome back. We're in section 2 of our Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. We're enjoying Brandi, sidestepper from Kennelwood. How was it again?
Sidebottom.
Sidebottom. I'll get it by the end of the show.
Right.
But anyway, and Brandi's a trainer and has been telling us a lot about how trainers come to be and what they try and do and look for when they get into a training class. One of the questions I had was, have there been any great dramatic events that have happened, something that you don't expect to happen but happens when you're training a new dog?
Oh.
Bites or fear bites or anything like that? And
I've had a couple surprise me. I was leading around what I thought was a very gentle dog, and it wagged its tail and looked at me like it wanted me to pet its face. I went down to pet it, and it went to snap at my hand. That was a real shock. When I very first started training. Yep.
Yeah. I've had that too as a veterinarian, where I thought, boy, I'm reading this animal. I think I'm a really good animal reader. And then every once in a while, an animal will just completely surprise the heck out of you. Do you guys have, we were talking about the Tom Rose is the school that taught you. There's some other school programs probably around the city and state. Do you guys interact? Do you guys have competitions from one organization to the other for training or other events? Because that'd be kind of fun.
That does sound really fun. I know that they're all really good friends. It's a really small community, the dog training community. If someone, wins something or buys a dog, everyone knows. So they're all friends, the schools and the teachers, like Michael Ellis and Tom Rose School. They're all friends.
But even within the Kennelwood system, since there's so many training programs, do you guys get together as trainers, or do they have special courses sponsored on behalf of the training group? So they'll come in and say, we're going to sponsor the special trainers coming in to do fearless training or something like that.
And they leave it to us because, like I said, we all have our own passions and things. So if we see a clinic or something or a trainer we want to attend, they will support us in that and, give us the time off or, help us pay for it, that sort of thing.
I think that'd be neat to suggest that, the different programs kind of interact together and maybe have your own internal Kennelwood kind of competitions and brings the pet owner into it and have a weekend event and then have scores and, they can, it's almost like, the horse racing every year or all these different competitions. They go to all these events, they accumulate points, and then at the end of the year, you could have best puppy of the year trainer or something like that. What do I know? I'm just a veterinarian.
That sounds cute.
So we've talked about the training side of it. Let's talk about the pet owner. So, you have all kinds of different people walking in the door with all kinds of different dogs. How do you begin the whole process? Do you have a lecture about what we're going to expect and how we expect you to behave and what you can hope for? What kind of questions do you get? Kind of just lead us into that discussion.
Yeah, from the very beginning, you have to make sure the client understands that all dogs are different, just like all people are different. And you try to see as best you can from the owner's perspective what they want from the dog. A lot of them just want better manners or maybe they have a specific, behavior they want fixed. You try to help out as best you can, and then that first lesson comes around and you sit them down and you talk about what goes into the training and what they're going to have to do, and to basically go over again. And they always ask, well, how long do you think this is going to take? And you have to tell them that everything's different and we'll see how it goes. All dogs' personalities are different.
Well, what if you're talking to a pet owner and you kind of notice, you're dealing with the people as well as the pets, right?
Correct.
And I do this again in my veterinary clinic, I'm always trying to measure what the person knows or what their perspective is. So, I mean, if you see a person who obviously is kind of heavy-handed on their dog,
Yeah.
what do you tell them? I mean, are you able to frankly kind of say, hey, this isn't going to work?
Yeah, if you see someone that is heavy-handed or it seems intimidating to their dog, or they've got that personality where it's like, I'm gonna, bite their ear if they, do, you just have to remind them that you want your dog to come when you call.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna come when they call.
If
when you
you're
call.
afraid of you.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So you got to work with your dog.
So what's the most difficult scenario that you've experienced?
Probably people that go in thinking they already know.
Oh, they think they know.
Yeah, they already know, and then you wonder half the time, why
are
am
you
I
here?
doing that? Yeah.
Yeah.
or they, since they think they already know, they're less likely to listen. They'll just turn you off.
Yeah. Oh, that's not good.
I like people that listen.
Yeah. Plus, it seems like they're wasting their own money if they're doing that. So.
That's correct. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about your attitude about treats. And treats as rewards or just treats outside of a training session?
Yeah, I like it, especially if your dog is food motivated. Now, all dogs are not food motivated. So if you're lucky enough to have a dog that will work for food, it really helps in the beginning.
Yeah.
You try to, gradually take it away as the training goes on, and say a couple weeks after you're done with our training program at home, if you want to use that treat only when you come for the dog, call the dog to come here. I like that a lot, because that's one of the hardest things to really train on a dog, is when it's off leash and come when called, and it's a safety thing. So in my opinion, I think it should have the biggest reward.
Yeah. How do you keep that dog as a protective mechanism around the home? Like, I always want my dogs to bark. I want them to yield to me when I tell them stop. But I also like the fact that if I'm out working late or whatever, that my family's going to be safe.
Yeah.
So how do you find that happy medium between, I want this dog to express some territorial, protection, and at the same time, I don't want them to be obnoxious to it.
I put a command to it. So when I don't want them to bark because it's a UPS man, and I want to be able to tell them quiet.
Yeah.
So that they go ahead and they follow their instinct and they bark anytime a stranger comes to the door, things like that. But then you just put a command to when you want them to stop. So you start teaching them quiet or relax or something.
Are there special treats that you suggest? Hard treats, soft treats? Are there special bite treats or nutritional or whatever?
When you're training the dog, at Kennelwood, since we have to go through and pretty quickly, we want to make the 15 minutes or 15, 20 minutes that we have with that puppy's focused attention for that part of the day as worthwhile as possible. Try to get as much into it as we can. We use soft treats. That way you don't have to sit there and wait for the puppy to chew up the kibble or a hard biscuit, something like that. So it is a softer, squishy treat. But it really doesn't matter what you use, especially at home. You can train your puppy with just its dinner.
Normal kibble.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because people are always asking me about all the different treats we can use, and I'm always concerned about changing diets, because changing diets means bad, sick tummies and diarrhea and vomiting, and that's in the pet owner, let alone the dog. No, I'm just kidding. So I always think, well, why don't you just use your regular kibble or whatever you're using, a little bit of that outside the sink, the schedule of a normal feeding, because most people like to feed 1, 2, or 3 times a day.
Right.
So I said, well, just use kibble in between, and then you'll be a lot safer, and you're not going to disrupt the dog's tummy and stuff like that.
We run into that at Kennelwood. The first couple days of training, they come and they're like, oh, the dog was kind of sick. And it's like, it's because we're using training treats. The stomach will get used to it. Or they'll bring in their own treats, which is perfectly fine. I will use treats that the owners bring in, especially if they have a sensitive stomach or something. It's not a problem at all.
Now, do you have to train dogs to go into puppy daycare or these dog parks? Do you think it's important that there's etiquette that the animals have to learn, or is the foundation of what you teach doing that automatically?
Yeah, it's the socialization. It's being able to be in a room with another dog and not react to it, being able to walk down the street and not react to it. Not all dogs you're going to be able to be like, all right, well, we fixed it. It's going to be able to go in the dog park and everything will be fine. There's just some dogs you're just not going to be able to do that with, and that's okay. Maybe you find 1 or 2 dogs that gets along with, and they can have a puppy play date.
Yeah.
Same
thing with daycare. The daycare is more confined, kind of.
Yeah, and it's a bunch of, they separate the dogs out in different sizes and ages and personalities. But, there's some dogs that maybe only play with another employee or, another dog they get along with. They don't all get along. So.
Right, that's true. And I've seen other programs around the city especially at the dog parks I've been around. And, it is a different game there because now you take the leads off and you let them run, and you just hope there isn't a negative interaction.
Even if your dog is nice, someone else's might not be.
Right, it might stimulate or trigger something in a nice dog that wouldn't normally present.
True.
So one of my good friends had, it was very, very popular, I think it was the Chesterfield Dog Park, and he would go there literally 2 times a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And he just loved it, but their whole community kind of developed. But then in the course of going there, as his dog developed from a puppy, it became kind of play aggressive. Yeah. And he had to stop the process, and then he took lessons for a couple months with a private trainer, and then was able to reintroduce the dog, and became like the most well-behaved dog in the group. And this was a big dog with plenty of energy, so that's a great tool.
Sometimes they lose their confidence and they have to get their confidence back. That's
an interesting point. Yeah. So should you be taking, if I go to the dog park, I probably shouldn't be bringing too many treats or special toys, because I would think that's going to trigger problems.
Well, I certainly wouldn't put a bone down around a bunch of dogs, because I mean they're going to go after it. Just leave that stuff at home, and just watch your dog. Anytime your dog is about, especially as a puppy or when they go through their fear stages, you don't want them getting dominated by another dog, and that's just going to bring insecurity to your dog, and it's something else you're going to have to work through. Some dogs never get over it.
What are some of the signs if I'm watching my dogs play, or at a dog park, or even in a class? What am I going to worry about? What are signs, the physical signs, the dog positions or whatever, that would demonstrate a concern? When
you see a dog really just stiff and staring, even if it's wagging its tail, if it's a stiff, high wag, that's something to look at.
What does that mean?
It means they're uncomfortable, and they're thinking, and the hackles will come up.
Sure.
Anytime when they start circling each other and the hackles are up, and you're starting to see the look in their eye, if you can see the whites of their eyes, you just kind of want to maybe just, if you don't have a leash, get over there quickly, because you can't pull them
try
apart.
And break up
just distract them for a little bit, maybe throw a stick and play.
Displace one behavior for another.
Just get them to do something else.
And what does happen real quickly at if 2 dogs get into it, let's say at daycare?
I've never seen actually anything like that really happen, because the staff is trained to see that before anything happens.
So they're really good.
Yes, we have some really good staff. They have tools at their disposal, the basic water bottle, or maybe what's it called, like foghorn? What's that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's just to distract them long enough to, maybe take one out. If one is particularly grumpy that day, it has to go back to the kennel for the day. Doesn't mean they'll never get to play again. Just means he has to have a timeout. Yeah,
timeout. Well, it's good discussion. We're going to come back in just a moment again. Dr. Doug Pernikoff of All Things Animal Radio Show, and Brandi Sidebottom, that's from Kennelwood Training, and she's been great with giving us a lot of good information. We'll be back in just a moment.
Wish that I could travel his way. Wish that I could travel his way.
There's no need to fear. Underdog is here.
We're in segment 3 with Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. Again, Cindy's not here today, but we'll have her back next week. Visiting right now with Brandi, and I'm going to try.
That's all right.
A trainer from Kennelwood, and she's been kind of explaining the whole process. I've been pretty interested in knowing that it was so kind of customized. I really always thought it was a real standardized program. So we started to talk a little bit about your background. Let's go back further. So what makes a young person get excited about dogs? You got the whole world open to you, and you can do lots of things. Where did it start? I mean, how young were you?
I was we moved to Missouri, and we were able to buy a farm when I was in 4th grade, and we just started. I got my first dog, and I was really excited. You okay?
Yeah, no, fine.
And from there, I don't know what it was, like the back road we were on, but everyone kept dumping dogs. We kind of started our own little doggy rescue.
Oh, really?
Not on purpose, but they got to the point where we tried to keep all of them. They got to about 5, and my mom was like, "Nope, we're not keeping anymore." So 6, 7, 8, 12, they just kept coming. So we just started taking them to the vet, taking care of them, feeding them, and then finding them new homes. And
sounds like your mom lost that battle. And she's still an animal lover?
Oh, yeah.
So she appreciates what you're into.
Yes, she loves dogs.
Have you worked with other animals, like horses or cows and stuff like that?
Yep. When I was younger, I competed in the 100 jumpers with a local farm. Did some training of, other people. I trained people to ride horses before I did the dogs.
So do you find the personality, obviously, of one species is a lot different than the other, but general principles that cross the board from working with horses, working with dogs, whatever? What are some of those that you note?
Well, I wish I had known, what I know now about the dogs, where I could work with the horses more.
Yeah.
Because some of the techniques, so they would cross over to all animals. I mean, the clicker technique came from, I think, training dolphins or something in
really?
SeaWorld, and
that's
it
right,
started there. But yes, horses are a lot of like fear. So it's like everything's trying to keep them from being afraid, and kind of the same thing with dogs.
Yeah, because I know with a horse, for instance, you could really get hurt.
Yes.
I mean, you got a lot of weight chasing, and if they act erratically, boy, even as a veterinarian, I don't think there's one veterinarian I've ever met that worked with horses their whole life and didn't have an incident where they got hurt, sometimes really badly.
They're just so unpredictable, and they're so big.
Have you ever been bitten by a dog?
I have been bitten by a dog. I was younger. I went to pet someone's, who I thought was a lovely pet, but I should have known better. It was a chow tied to like a barn.
That doesn't sound like a good safety.
No, I was pretty young.
Yeah. Well, I tell people in the clinic, I said, your dog, they always come in, they say, well, your dog, my dog doesn't get it bite, he's mean or anything. I said, yeah, but you're not sticking needles into him. So this away from home, it's a different setting.
When they're nervous and cornered.
Yeah, and if you're a little kid and you go to another house, I always tell people, if people are coming to visit you and you've got a dog there, don't assume that your dog's going to be friendly with that child. Yeah. And you've got to teach the children to protect their friends. So you always kind of sit them down and let them talk to the dog and get to know them before they get friendly with them. But if you just go out and grab at a dog, you have a good chance at even the friendliest dogs.
Yeah. Most dogs are going to try and run off first. So like horses, they're going to try and get away first. And if they're cornered, then their last resort is they're going to bite. So.
That's right. That's right. Now, what kind of, at Kennelwood, what kind of vaccine requirements are there for any of the programs, or in particular training?
Well, for all the programs, we need, rabies if they're old enough. I think 3 or 4 months is when we require it. And Bordetella, the canine cough. And distemper or puppy shots, and the flu shot. Must have a flu shot
you're requiring now.
We have to, yes, it's
okay,
required.
so that's a 2-shot series. So
in the beginning,
at least have to have the first one in before.
Yes.
And then I always tell people, assume a few days, because it takes a few days to initiate or stimulate a new titer. So don't assume because you got vaccinated at 10 o'clock in the morning that your dog's fully protected to go to the shop at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we ask them to do that. But I mean, I know circumstances occur where they show up, they're about to leave on vacation.
Yeah.
They didn't read the fine print.
Right.
And they need their flu shot. And if they need it, we walk them down to your office and you can give them a flu shot. And they come
There's
back.
a little pitch for the Clarkson Wilson Veterinary Clinic, which is right down the sidewalk from the West County. What do you call your
Chesterfield location?
Chesterfield location, right on Clarkson Road in Wilson. And we share the same shopping center. It's kind of nice.
Yes.
And we help each other. So if you guys have a dog getting groomed and has a little cut, you come to us. If we have problems with training or whatever, we go to you. So it works nicely. That's very good. And how does it work with Kennelwood? And you don't board at your facility?
Correct.
So if they want to drop off,
yes.
And then you have a van, I guess.
Yeah,
that
I call it the school bus, but it's the shuttle.
Shuttle.
It's a van you see driving around town with the big dog on top. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the doggy shuttle.
Yeah.
It'll take them down to the Page and Lindbergh location if you drop off at our Chesterfield location.
That's right. That's your core location.
Yeah, that's our original.
Yeah, very good. Very good. That's really interesting. What would you like to see yourself doing in 10 years in this business?
Well, in 10 years, I hope I have a nice big clientele and I have titled all my dogs and hopefully start to make a name for myself. That's about what I go for.
When you title the dogs, do you have to go back for more education to kind of reinforce, or what we in human professions we call it continuing education? Do they have opportunities for, or let's say a pet owner wants to get a rebriefing Are those programs available to come back and do an abbreviated
Yeah.
course, or
It's called a refresher, and you are now an alumni if you go through your core training with a trainer. And your prices are discounted after that. Once
how
you go
long
through
are
your
those
core training.
programs? Are those
The
also-
refresher courses? Oh,
Yeah.
that's totally up to you. I
So-
have people that can come every single day. Some people come once a month. Some people come once a week.
And they're charged proportionately, I guess,
Yes.
to the time. Now, how many trainers are there in the Kennelwood system, would you guess?
Give me a moment.
Okay. She's counting on her fingers, people. Do you have a-
There's 2 or 3 at each location,
Oh,
so
okay,
there's
okay.
plenty.
And do you ever cross over if somebody's out and about?
Oh yeah, if
you go
someone's
help each
sick
other?
or something, yeah, we cover for each other.
Oh, that's very cool.
We're all.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you share with us that's very interesting that you'd like to express? Something about the program that you want to share with the audience that they may not know about?
Oh, just that it is catered to them. So a lot of people call and they just want to know about the puppy classes or the treadmill class or, things like that. It's whatever you would like your dog to learn. And we try to focus on manners for all dogs. That's just habit. That's going to come with any trainer you work with. They're not going to want to be jumped on and barked at.
What is the treadmill? That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, once you get through your core training or even part of it, there's an option where you can your dog can be trained on the treadmill. It's really nice for those Missouri winters when you don't want to take your dog out for a walk, say in January.
Well, that's a good point. I was going to ask, does this program go year-round? Because the winter obviously is going to be a deterrent to people wanting to get out. Nobody wants to get out in the middle of the cold.
Right, so it really helps people, especially people that have those active dogs.
Yeah.
You don't want to have your Weimaraner
Running
in the
around.
house all winter long. Yeah, you want to be able to put it on the treadmill and get some energy out.
My little ones, they just
Oh, yeah.
go nuts around the house. We call them on crazy runs. A lot of dogs do that.
The
but-
zoomies?
Yeah, the zoomies. Where all of a sudden you go, okay, what happened here? Little dogs zooming around the place, knocking over everything.
Exactly.
So that kind of energy. So it happens on the little dogs. On a big dog, I can't imagine what kind of damage they could do.
Bull in the china shop.
I know, it's really funny. I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the communication skills that you develop and the interpretation of the behaviors you said that are so important. How do you train yourself? How do you continue to train yourself to become more acutely aware and astute to what you're doing?
You really have to be observant. If you ever notice a dog, say you think you have an idea and you want to do this, you notice all of a sudden it backs up or it seems unsure of itself. You have to go back and look at yourself and say, did I turn my body a certain way to make the dog react that way? And then just try to go from there. Or, you got to just understand dog behavior and yourself. Try not to, stare at the dog.
Right.
If the
threatening.
dog seems nervous, you don't want to stare directly at it.
But do you summarize? Let's say you have a case. You have Joe Schmo walks in with his little, whatever, bunny rabbit puppy or whatever. And do you sit down at the end of the lesson and keep notes on every particular pet? And then do you sit down at the end of your session for that animal? Let's say it's 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. Do you kind of reflect for yourself or on behalf of do they get a scorecard? Do the pet owner get some kind of summary of where you think the puppy's strengths are and weaknesses and what to focus on?
Well, after those 4 weeks, most people will do the 4 weeks.
That's a minimum.
It's not a minimum, but it's recommended. Mm-hmm. All dogs are different, like I said, but by the end of 4 weeks, your dog should have the idea of what we've been trying to teach it. But yeah, no, you keep notes as a trainer, not only for your sake, but for, the owner's sake. So say the dog comes back in 2 weeks, you know where you were with that dog and what it needs to work on, but same thing. Mm-hmm. At the end of those 4 weeks, you would have already had 8 private lessons with that person. I mean,
yeah.
They know everything you've done with that
Just
dog.
like my psychologist, he looks at his notes and says, you're still nuts here, you're still doing this wrong. But, so it's good to hear that I'm not alone in this world. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the, what's the program, the Invisible Fence.
Oh, the Invisible Fence program.
And that was started at Kennelwood, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, so how does that work?
It's a line buried in the grass, and the dog wears a collar, and it's really nice for homeowners. It's very cost effective when you put it beside a solid fence.
And it works inside too.
It works inside, and you can keep even cats out of certain rooms.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
wow.
they have automatic dog doors. If, say, you want to have a doggy door, your dog will be able to go in and out, and only your dog, not the raccoons.
Yeah.
It's a really nice
One-way
thing
trip.
to have. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. We're going to break and come back for our final wrap up and have another question or two for you. But thank everybody in the audience. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show, minus my co-host Cindy Vickers, but plus our special guest Brandi Hoofenhofer of Kennelwood. Say it one more time for the
Brandi Sidebottom.
Sidebottom, okay. And we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you very much.
Speed of lightning, roar of thunder, fighting all who rob or plunder. Underdog.
Well, welcome back to our segment 4 here at the Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. And guess what, gang? We found our co-host. And you remember her? Remember her now? Cindy Vickers. Cindy, you want to say hi to the group?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm just trying to get caught up with what you might have been talking about in my absence.
We were talking about
Just-
training. It was your gig, for sure.
Well, yeah, well, training, like, give me an example of what you might say.
We
or
can't
what
say
your
it.
husband
It's
said.
this is
just true.
this is the recap segment, and we wanted to thank you for calling in. We'll see you next week. No, I'm just stay with us till we finish here. So Brandi is a trainer.
You know that I used to live right there. I used to live right by Tom Rose's doghouse, right up the street from there.
Oh, wow.
In fact,
Wow, I
when
didn't
I
know.
had I had a horrible car accident one time where I literally flipped my car over and landed on top, and it was just essentially across the street
Wow.
from Tom Rose's.
Yeah, it's a
nobody
scary-
came to get me.
That's a difficult
Not one
road.
single person in that club came to my aid.
Well, if I was there, I
So,
would have.
just saying.
I would have picked up
Yeah,
the car
so-
and shaken you out of it. So Brandi's.
I did.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brandi is a young trainer that's was trained at Tom Bro's program, and she's been working at Kennelwood. She works out in our area, in our neighborhood, and she's given us a great story about how she got interested, where she went with it. And I didn't realize this because I know we've had other trainers on, but just so you know, it's a really customizable program over at Kennelwood, and I was really impressed. What is your site to get to again? If people want to find out more about your program.
Kennelwood.com.
Cindy, you introduced that we're going to do events, and then ask Brandi what the event is. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I think we're about ready to hear about some events that are coming up in St. Louis, and I'm as excited to hear this as anybody because I just don't know what it is. So, Brandi,
Go for it, Brandi.
you get the floor.
And that's why we have her as a co-host. She's amazing. She's intuitive. She can adapt. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brandi.
Kennelwood is having an event August 12th from 10 to 2 at the St. Peter's location, the Summer Slobberfest, with the trainers Caitlin and Jessica you can meet.
I'll never forget, I was eating dinner at my brother's, and he had a big Mastiff. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden the Mastiff swings its head, and up goes a big globber of saliva, and it just went straight up in the air. It was like slow motion. My brother and I were just watching as it came and approached the dinner table, splat all over it. It was like we looked at each other and go, shook our heads. That was it.
Well, I have a little training thing I want to tell you about. I had a friend who was well, it doesn't matter what he was for a living, but he had these 2 Mastiffs, and he trained. And if you don't, especially if you're not comfortable with dogs, or maybe you've never even seen a Mastiff, it's a very intimidating looking dog because they're just so big with that big giant head. So what he would do, this is horrible, he would put them in their crates, and somebody would come in who was new, and then he'd fling open the crates and he'd say, "Charge!"
Oh.
And that was their word for lay
Cruel.
down.
That's really cruel.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah. Right. I didn't speak highly of his compassion or humanity or anything. But
Well, I'll have to
so
tell you
fun.
about the trainer I know that used to treat aggressive dogs with a cast iron frying pan, which was always amazing to me. So I want to thank Brandi once more and sharing the Kennelwood adventure with us. And again, if you guys need her, you can find her at kennelwood.com, and they'll give you all the information. If you're looking for Cindy and training events through us, you can call 636-530-1808, which is our clinic number, the Clarkson Wilson Veterinary Clinic. And you can find me there as well. And we just appreciate everybody listening and learning. And Cindy, we'll get to be with you next week, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's
I will.
great. Good. It's great talking to you.
Wait, what is next week?
I don't know. Next
week.
week.
It's the 17th. Okay, yeah, I'm on.
Oh, she's
I'm
going to
there.
be there. Oh, she's so sweet to us. Thank you, Brandi. Thank you, Cindy. And we will talk to everybody. Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. Be back next week to enjoy and entertain. Bye-bye.
You are my wife.
Goodbye, City Life.
Great.